Hi everyone! In today's video I'm going to be going through some of my 2019 A-Level Psychology predictions, and this is for the addiction section of Paper 3. So before we start, it is just worth me mentioning that I never studied addiction at A-Level. It wasn't one of the topics that our teacher chose for us to do, but I have, however, looked through all of the content, so I do have an understanding of it. Also, some of the content has been covered within my uni course. So I do have an understanding of the content, but again, this just emphasises the need for you to still make sure you do revise everything. And that's just because I don't have that same experience as all of you at answering all of the past paper questions. Just to note to everyone, at the end of this video, I've just put up a list of all of the topics that I've already covered, and you'll find these videos on my channel. I will be covering all of the other topics as soon as possible, so keep your eyes peeled when I upload these as and when onto my channel. I can't promise when they'll be, but they'll definitely be early on this week. So first, I'm just going to go through what was in the 2018 paper. So there was a question on the effects of tolerance. There was Prochaska's, I'm not really sure how you pronounce that, model of behaviour change. And then there was your 16-mark question, which was on ways of reducing addiction. And within this, you could have spoken about either drug therapy, behavioural intervention, or CBT. So what do I think could be in the 2019 paper? First of all, I think there could be a question on the explanations for gambling addiction. Within this, you have the learning theory and the cognitive theory. The learning theory looks at the processes of vicarious reinforcement, that is, positive and negative reinforcement. There are also two types of reinforcement here, partial reinforcement and variable reinforcement. There is also the idea of cue reactivity, which explains how addiction can be maintained and reinstated after a relapse. The cognitive theory consists of many elements. One of these is the expectancy theory. This is the idea that gambling will continue if the player expects the future benefits to outweigh the costs. There is also the idea of cognitive biases. For this, it would be useful to know the 4 categories developed by Rickwood. These are skill and judgment, personal traits / ritual behaviours, selective recall, and faulty perception. It would also be good to know some research that goes alongside this, for example, that by Griffiths. Finally, you also need to know about the idea of self-efficacy and how this relates to gambling addictions. Next, you've got the explanations for nicotine addiction. Within this, you have the subtopics of brain neurochemistry and the learning theory. Within brain neurochemistry, you need to ensure that you know about the desensitization hypothesis and the focus on acetylcholine receptors and dopamine transmission. You also need to know about the nicotine regulation model. Within this, you need to know about the different withdrawal symptoms. You also need to know about dependence and tolerance. Within the learning theory explanation of nicotine addiction / smoking behaviour, you of course have the process of operant conditioning, which involves positive and negative reinforcement. You then have the process of classical conditioning, which explains the role of cue reactivity. For both the explanations for gambling addiction and the explanation for nicotine addiction, I think the learning theory is the more likely theory that would come up. Next, you have the different risk factors in the development of addiction. The first of these is genetic vulnerability. Genes are not a cause of addiction on their own, but once a person is exposed to a drug, the idea of genetic vulnerability can be used to explain why some people become addicted, whilst others do not. There is also the idea of genetic mechanisms, which there are 2 of. You have the way the neurotransmitter dopamine communicates in the brain, and then also the idea that some people are more able to metabolize some substances. You also have stress, and there is research to support this. There is also the idea of personality, whereby antisocial personality disorder has the highest correlation to addiction-related behaviour. There are also some family influences, with perceived parental approval being the most consistently reliable factor. And finally, there are the role of peer relationships, which is the most important psychosocial factor. Mary O'Connell identified a series of factors relating to peer influence, and it would be beneficial for you if you were to know what these different factors are, as well as a brief summary of them. And finally, you have the theory of planned behaviour, which was proposed by Ajzen. Central to the theory of planned behaviour is the concept of intention. The idea is that behaviour can be predicted from our intentions to behave in a certain way. The theory proposes that intentions to give up their addiction arises from three influences: our personal attitudes, our beliefs about what others think, and our ability to change our drug-related behaviour. As I've said within all of my other Paper 3 topic videos, we could also see a comparison question somewhere. So this is just an example, but you could be asked to compare the different explanations for a nicotine addiction. So this would be your brain neurochemistry explanation and your learning theory. Or you could also be asked to compare the different explanations for a gambling addiction. So this would be your cognitive theory and your learning theory. And another thing just to be mindful of is that we have seen research methods in this section of the paper pretty much every year, so just make sure that you're still up to date on your research methods revision, which hopefully you will be because you should have revised it for paper 2. And so the topics I've highlighted in red are just the topics I think are most likely to come up, not necessarily as 16 markers, but just come up somewhere within the paper. However, as always, you do still need to make sure that you do revise everything, because this list could be completely wrong. AQA could ask whatever they want to, so of course you need to be prepared for any case. You need to be able to answer all of those smaller answer questions in order to get yourself into those higher grade boundaries, which I'm sure many of you are aiming to do. And so, with all of that being said, I just want to say huge good luck to all of you. Of course, as I've just said, do make sure you still revise everything, and if you do have any subject-specific questions, feel free to leave them down below, and either I or anyone else within the comments, will get back to you so we can all just help each other out in order to get those high grades that I'm sure you're all capable of getting. You also need to remember that just because a topic came up last year, it doesn't mean that it won't come up again this year. And now this list that I've just put on screen is just a list of the topic videos that I've already covered for paper 3 in separate videos. So you can feel free to go and find these for yourself within my videos on my channel. I will be covering the other videos as soon as possible, definitely before your exam. So just keep your eyes peeled for when I upload all of the other videos for you. And then another quick note, if you'd like any other revision videos made for specific topics, feel free to just leave any comments down below. The topics I covered at A-level were gender, schizophrenia and forensics, so those are the topics that I would be best at. However, I could make any of the other topic videos for you, or I could point you in the right direction of some really good YouTube channels that I personally used, which I think would be helpful to you also.